I was just starting to joke with my mom about the fact that, well, I got a driver's license and I won't need to get another one in about 8 years. And I said, it's very possible I won't even be living in Texas in 8 years. I'll probably be living with my brother out in California, and he lives in the area of Los Angeles, so I'll probably be accessible to producers and, because it seems like I've got a kind of an ear for music. I might be one of those guys that sits in and determines if something sounds good or not, or I might develop abilities in that area, but I can't be gainfully employed. So I would just be a guy sitting off on the side, kind of just hanging out and watching people come in and making suggestions and junk like that. Maybe singing in on something, I don't know. It would be mostly protester groups that I'd be involved with, because I'm a kind of a protester myself. I can't really be with commercial folks because I hate the way our corporations run, and the whole idea of the stock market and everything. I don't even know why I've got money in stocks. I mean, it can be both good and bad. It's really what it does is it's like weed killer for companies. My dad told me how weed killer works is it makes the weeds grow too fast. That's how it kills them. And if you take a company that's just starting up before it even realizes its market, if you put it right on the stock market, they'll get more money, and they may not even realize what they've got. They may not even develop it correctly because they've got way too much money. And so also that the stock market causes business people who are influenced by money to make really bad choices. And Boeing is a perfect example of that. Anyhow, I'm finding out things about Udio, people that use Udio in order to make music. I didn't realize that they had done this, but they permit you to upload audio and create music using that audio. But I was thinking, oh, now I can do this. But then I found out you can't publish it. You can't provide links on Udio to the music you create, regardless of whether you have the rights to the licensing of music you upload or not. You cannot produce music from that. I think really that's just for their membership, that some people are going to use it and some people aren't. And the people that aren't going to use it are going to be bugged by people not recognizing their capacity to create tunes without using commercial or non-commercial sound sources. Also, I think it would exhibit the fact that Udio trained their model on commercial music. It's way too obvious that they did. And the other thing is that the audio upload feature will only be able to replicate the styles of things it was trained on. So even if you think that if you think that it will help in your music making ability to augment your music, it's going to do a little more than that, and it's really going to make it difficult for people to tell if you made the song, because it's going to replace your voice with whatever it can determine is relevant to its training. So it's going to exhibit the commercial side of its training. It's not going to replicate your voice. It's going to replicate somebody close to your voice. It's not going to replicate your style of playing. It's going to replicate somebody who's close to your style of playing, and so on. And that's all because of the way that it comes up with the sound is via diffusion. How diffusion works, this is described to me by Gemini, is that when it's trained, it is trained on sounds that noise is gradually added to. And then whenever it is made to make something, it turns noise back into sound, and it uses its ability to recognize patterns in the recognize patterns in the data from noise to a solid form based upon the prompt and other clues it's given, like the context window. So it'll look back in the past while it's making the music, it'll look back at the music that's been made already, the sound that's been made up to 2 minutes, and it will use that to influence what it decides to do as it's creating the song. And so actually adjusting the context window, which is what that's called, will influence whether or not it uses something from what it's generated to create the future, or what comes from the prompt. And if you make it way too short, it will actually add this slapping effect to the sound. And I think that's it basically not being able to figure out, not being able to make sound out of the noise it's presented. So the noise kind of represents, well, the reason why they use noise in the first place for any of this kind of stuff, the diffusion, is that it's 50% correct. Noise is always 50% correct because it's either, well, it's true of binary noise, but the idea is that you're closer to the solution if you if you fill the space with noise than if you fill the space with black or white, or a particular value. It's always going to be 50%. It's going to have a greater chance of being correct if you just fill it with noise. And that's the reason why they use noise in the first place, for generating patterns, or generating a outcome, an output, is starting with noise. And that reminds me of things like what they do in 3D computer graphics, where they use one-sided polygons to speed up the processing, because you're not going to see the polygons that are pointed away from you, so why even draw them? And so those are optimizations, those are considerations that programmers and mathematicians think about whenever they're trying to optimize things, is by reasoning with math and logic and intuition, the things that just don't make any sense to involve in the computation to speed it up. Pixar made a shader, and the way Pixar does all their rendering with their RenderMan system is by by permitting programmers who are also artists to make choices about how things are drawn in 3D. That's where the idea of the shader came from, was pretty much Pixar made it up. And what it does is it makes choices about geometry and how to paint geometry on using functions that are just make little checks to determine how something is supposed to be painted. So an example of that is that if you look at the corner behind me, you will notice that it looks a little bit darker than the rest of the room. Well, they have a shader that just does that. It makes the corners of room by default darker than the rest of the room. Because when light goes toward the corner, it just doesn't come back with the same brightness. That's true of cones. If you, my dad had created a thing called a black body that was used to, he was a physicist, that was used it was used to make satellites, used to detect bad elements in satellite photo arrays, or the arrays that they use to recognize elements in the atmosphere. And to calibrate these CCDs, or the cameras, or the backplane, the thing that senses the light, the photoelectric stuff, was to aim it into a cone that was painted with a black, a rough black paint that would work well to diffuse the light and at the same time force it into the corner of the cone, where it just doesn't come back brighter, and in this case probably not at all. And to do that also with the radiation. And so with the light and the radiation, anything that went into the cone wouldn't come out, which would make it perfectly dark to the photoelectric cell or whatever. And he created that. He worked on the cone that would do that, so that they could calibrate the CCDs used in weather satellites. And so what I was talking about, the optimizations that they do to make this stuff work. I still don't fully understand AI and how things work. I've come to understand from the buzzwords that, or the slang that or the specific things they talk about, like transformers and diffusion, as to what they both do. And the transformers is the stuff they use to train AI. It sounds like that it's when the AI is able to train itself. That's what they mean by transformers, is the ability for AI to train itself. And the diffusion is what I just described, is a method of coming up with content from noise, creating something from noise based upon a prompt which describes to the AI what it's looking for in the noise, what it's expecting to find in the noise. Somebody pointed out to me that a lot of what AI does is it generates in its computer brain a simulation of the reality that gives it an expectation of what it's going to find when it experiences reality through its senses. And then it compares that to what it finds, and the delta of difference, the error between what it imagined and what it finds, determines, actually trains it to make a better decision about what it's expecting to find the next time it goes looking into the darkness or whatever it is that it's looking at. So it gradually, it really, that's kind of what I hear from LLMs, is that when they generate an answer or response, they're anticipating what the next word's going to be based upon the words that have already come through. And if it doesn't completely satisfy the model will actually backtrack and reword the message. And I'm not sure if the model has one part that does that or two parts. If there's a key, I have seen how LLMs are trained in that they'll have 90% of it be the input and 10% be the thing that models if the input is correct. So that it'll take the sample data and it'll send 90% of it to train the model. And then the model, when it's trying to determine if it correctly matches the data, will look at the 10% to test its ability to recognize the data. So it's like one part is used to model, one part is used to train the AI, and the other part is used to test its ability to predict what the outcome, what the output should look like. And that's how it learns. And they've got all these techniques that they're building every day to try to get closer and closer to something that is accurate. And when they talk about tokens, I came to the realization that what tokens are is they are enumerations of the patterns that the AI tries to discern. And so that's the reason why the Nvidia head guy will talk about tokens as being like just anything, is that what's really happening there is they're correlating a number to identify each concept that the AI has been trained on. So if it's a car, it will have a token to represent the car, that the specific car that is being referenced. But within that car, when it's trying to recognize parts of the car, there will be a special AI that will have been trained to create that car or to imagine that car or all the different models for that particular car. And each of the parts are also called tokens. So it's kind of like what a token is it's just a unique enumerated, and the reason why I say enumerated is because when you're creating a computer language, you enumerate all of the parts of syntax and those enumerations determine the syntax that is used. It determines how you describe things, and it might use a kind of enumeration in order to recognize the variables and the data types that the variables use. So really all the token is what it is it's a unique identifier for a piece, for an atomic thing that can be used to describe something. It could be a word. In the case of text, it could be a subpart of a word, and that those collection of subparts could define a word, or it could be a unique word. So it's not quite a dictionary, it's the subparts necessary to create all the words in a dictionary. So it might have a TY as being a token. It might have I before E except after C token. It has all these little concepts that permit it to generate language and recognize it and break it down into pieces and to do statistics on that and determine what the likelihood of it is to find a word with a tokenization of words. It can get complex, and it's all dependent upon how the model conceptualizes the information put in. And that conceptualization may actually generate the array of tokens or identifiers for every single little subpart. The way to think about it is that a token is like a Lego piece. Whenever you're making a Lego building, you can make buildings, you can make pretty much anything. The piece doesn't really change its shape. It's a matter of how you use it that determines what it can produce. And there can be a token to represent the various kinds of buildings. And then there are the tokens that represent the various parts that make the buildings. And so when Nvidia is talking about everything that their cards can produce, all the can construct things for all the various industries. What they're really talking about is that they can create an understanding for all the various kinds of ideas that are in the industries and the relationships and how they are put together and all the things that need to be considered when creating any kind of thing, manufacturing any kind of thing, recognizing any kind of thing. And the parts that are processed are the tokens, the identifiers, the information they represent. And the AI uses those identifiers along with whatever data is associated with them, like if it's 3D or sound or whatever, to try to recognize and break down anything it sees and reconstruct. And that's what their cards do, is it permits them to deconstruct and reconstruct tokenized information. At least that's my idea of what's going on.